Welcome, my bountiful friends. Jump on into the seat next to me as we tune in and drop out and embark on a 6-month road trip, staying well away from the man, Daddy-O, because today we're going to be delving deep into Jack Kerouac's counterculture classic, On the Road. Fast cars, jazz, hitchhiking across America, freedom, recklessness, and the search for meaning. Few books have captured the spirit of rebellion and wanderlust like On the Road, a novel that has become the defining text of the Beat generation. But how did this book come to be? What's its story, its style, its impact on literature and pop culture? Today, I'll be diving deep into it, from its spontaneous creation to its lasting legacy. Jack Kerouac was a writer and a poet. He is recognised alongside Allen Ginsberg and William S. Burroughs as one of the founding pioneers of the Beat generation, which was the first post-war youth movement in the modern era. Running from the 1940s and throughout the 50s, it was characterised by a rejection of mainstream societal norms, an embrace of personal and artistic freedom, an exploration of spirituality, drugs and alternative lifestyles. Kerouac was born in Lowell, Massachusetts in 1922 to French-Canadian parents. He joined and served in the Merchant Marine during World War II. After the war, he attended Columbia University, where he showed much promise as a writer and a football player. But he dropped out to become part of a group of writers and thinkers who would later be known as beatniks. He published his first book, The Town and the City, in 1950 and achieved worldwide fame with On the Road in 1957. He first conceived of the idea of it in the late 40s, inspired by his real-life travels across the United States with his close friend, Neil Cassady. Between 1947 and 1950, he hitchhiked, rode buses, and drove across America with Cassady, who had become the model for the book's most famous character, Dean Moriarty. In 1951, Kerouac sat down and wrote On the Road in a legendary 3-week burst of energy on a single 120-foot-long scroll of paper. Fueled by coffee and benzodrine, a type of amphetamine, he typed nearly non-stop, aiming to capture the raw energy of his travels and experiences. This method of spontaneous prose would become one of his signature styles. Ironically, even though he managed to produce the manuscript in almost record-breaking speed, it would take 6 more years to actually get it published. Editors struggled with its experimental style and controversial themes, and it took many revisions before Viking Press finally agreed to publish it in 1957. Kerouac's On the Road is a semi-autobiographical novel based on his experiences travelling across America in the 1940s. The characters are mirrors of the Beat generation, each representing a different aspect of freedom, rebellion and self-destruction. The main character is called Sal Paradise. He's our protagonist. He is a fictionalised version of Kerouac himself. He is dark-haired, somewhat stocky, often depicted as brooding or thoughtful. He's a younger writer who embarks on multiple road trips in search of freedom, adventure and deeper meaning in life, and is introspective and cautious in nature. Dean Moriarty is Sal's best friend and co-protagonist. He is a fictionalised version of Kerouac's acquaintance Neil Cassady. He is a wild, energetic and charismatic figure with a mad glint in his eyes. He's lean, wiry, and with a perpetual restless energy, and short cropped hair with a rugged, sharp-featured face. He's the catalyst for Sal's adventures, pushing him towards spontaneity and reckless living. He embodies raw, untamed freedom and a thirst for experience. Mary Lou is Dean's free-spirited wife and is based on the real-life personage of Luann Henderson, who was Cassady's teenage wife. She is blonde, young, attractive and full of life, but is also naive. She is sensual and playful, yet is always fragile in her relationship with Dean. She represents the romantic yet doomed ideal of youthful freedom and is often discarded and mistreated by Dean, but remains attached to him. Camille is Dean's second wife and is based on Caroline Cassidy, who happened to be Neil's second wife, and also she had a brief relationship with Kerouac himself. She is dark-haired, more mature and responsible than Mary Lou. She is often depicted as tired, disillusioned and emotionally drained. She represents the conflict between domesticity and Dean's need for freedom. She serves as a tragic figure trying to bring stability into Dean's chaotic life, but ultimately failing. Ed Dunkel is a travelling companion and is based on Al Hinkle, a friend of Neil Cassidy. He is tall, strong and physically imposing compared to Sal and Dean. He is not as intellectual, but is easygoing. He joins Sal and Dean on their road trips and acts as a follower, going along with the adventures without questioning much. Galatea Dunkel is Ed's wife and is based on Helen Hinkle. She is serious, slightly older and responsible, and unimpressed by Dean's recklessness. She represents practicality and maturity, serving as a contrast to the beat lifestyle. She calls out Dean's irresponsibility, making her one of the few voices of reason. Carlo Marx is Sal's intellectual poet friend and is based on the Beat Generation co-founder Allen Ginsberg. He's short, bearded and wears glasses. He has expressive eyes, frequently passionate in discussions and is poetic. He is the intellectual voice in the novel. He's deeply involved in philosophical debates about life, poetry and the meaning of their experiences. He has a deep emotional friendship with Dean Moriarty. His name is very obviously derived from the German philosopher and father of socialist and communist thought, Karl Marx. Old Bull Lee is a mentor figure and writer. He is based on the Beat Generation co-founder William S. Burroughs. He is thin, intellectual, older and bespectacled. He smokes frequently, often has a piercing stare. He is a mentor-like figure who warns Sal and Dean about their reckless ways. He is deeply cynical, intelligent and detached from their wild lifestyle. Remy Boncoeur is Sal's friend in San Francisco. He is based on Henri Crew, an old friend of Kerouac's from Lowell, Massachusetts. He is short, excitable and a little erratic but well-meaning. He is often seen laughing or playing the joker. He helped Sal get a job as a night watchman in San Francisco. He represents the humorous, light-hearted side of the beat lifestyle. So what is On the Road actually about? Well, it certainly isn't a novel constructed of a multi-layered intricate plot, but rather it's a train of thought, a mood, and a journey, which is both physical and mental in nature. It is more than a travel narrative, it's a meditation on freedom, friendship, and the search for meaning, and the inevitable loss of youthful idealism. Sal, a young writer living in New York, is restless and eager for adventure. When he meets Dean Moriarty, a charismatic, reckless and free-spirited drifter, he is immediately drawn to his wild energy and unquenchable thirst for life. Dean embodies everything Sal desires: spontaneity, raw enthusiasm, and an absolute rejection of societal norms. Inspired by Dean's boundless energy and a love for the road, Sal embarks on a journey westward, hitchhiking, taking buses, and driving across America. The novel is structured around several road trips, each pushing Sal and Dean into new experiences. Their first trip takes them to the Midwest and into Denver, where they reunite with a group of friends, including the intellectual poet Carlo Marx. The road then leads Sal to San Francisco, where he works odd jobs and falls into a brief love affair before returning to New York. Sal and Dean's friendship deepens and their travels become wilder. They drive recklessly across the country, fueled by jazz, poetry, drugs and a longing for something undefined. Along the way they encounter a cast of vibrant characters, including Dean's wives, Mary Lou and Camille, who suffer from his erratic and unreliable nature. Dean constantly moves from one woman to another, unable to settle down or commit to responsibility. His charm is magnetic, but his self-destructive tendencies begin to reveal cracks in his persona. Their journeys take them through the neon-lit streets of New York, the bars of Denver, the jazz clubs of San Francisco, the dusty roads of Texas, and even into Mexico. Sal and Dean embrace the chaos of life, seeking enlightenment in fleeting moments of joy, listening to bebop in smoky clubs, racing across endless highways, and engaging in philosophical debates about life and existence. But as time passes, Sal begins to see Dean for what he truly is, a restless, unstable drifter chasing an unattainable ideal. The novel ends with a sense of melancholy and disillusionment. Dean, once the hero of Sal's journey, is now broken, lost and abandoned by almost everyone. Sal, realising he has outgrown the chaos, watches as Dean disappears into the night, symbolising the end of an era. On the Road is a book that feels like travel. Kerouac uses spontaneous prose. His writing is fast, raw and unfiltered. The book's rhythm was inspired by jazz, especially bebop, an improvisational style played by the likes of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. This influence is evident as long, flowing sentences mimic the breathless energy of free-form jazz, while the characters live fast, talk fast and move fast, just like the music. The dialogue feels natural, often blending with narration in a rush of thought. The novel captures the post-war restlessness of America. It contains an endless mix of neon-lit diners and highways that stretch out into the unknown, from the smoky underground jazz clubs of New York and San Francisco. So what is On the Road really about, beyond cars, parties and freedom? What themes was Kerouac exploring? Freedom and restlessness. The novel glorifies wandering and rebellion. The characters reject the traditional life of 9-to-5 jobs, stability and domesticity, exchanging it for a lifestyle free from the constraints of societal norms and expectations. They have chosen a lifestyle that is focused on living for the now, while the lifestyle that they have left is very much focused on achieving agreed communal future goals such as marrying, buying cars and a house. Friendship and hero worship. Sal idolises Dean. He admires his carefree spirit and the way he carries himself, but by the end he finally sees Dean's flaws. Dean is erratic and an inveterate risk taker, and is just as lost as everyone else. The novel reflects the idealism and eventual disillusionment of youth. And then there's the search for meaning. Despite their adventures, both Sal and Dean struggle to find fulfillment. Dean seeks freedom, but in the end, all it leads to is chaos and self-destruction. The road itself is a metaphor for possibility, escape and adventure. The book paints a romantic yet gritty picture of America's highways, cities and forgotten towns. When On the Road was published in 1957, it was an instant sensation, but also highly controversial. Favourable critics praised its energy and originality, calling it a breakthrough in American literature, while those unfavourable dismissed it as immature, self-indulgent and morally reckless. The New York Times called it a major novel of our times, while others labelled it juvenile delinquency glorified. Regardless of the initial backlash, On the Road left an undeniable mark on American culture. It inspired an entire generation, influencing writers like Hunter S. Thompson, Bob Dylan and Patti Smith. It is considered the definitive novel of the Beat generation and paved the way for counterculture movements that followed, such as the 1960s hippie movement. It also kicked off the modern road trip literature, which in turn inspired the road movie. Today, it's taught in universities and remains a rite of passage for young adventurers and seekers. It remains one of the most defining works of American literature, a novel that captures the raw, rebellious spirit of a generation hungry for something beyond the ordinary. We live in a very different society in the 21st century than that of the post-war 20th century. It could be argued that the novel doesn't have the same visceral impact that it had back in the day. Society is long used to people declaring that they are independent individuals who are free to live life as they wish. You would have to be far out on the margins to be condemned for your lifestyle choice these days in Western society. For another thing, there would certainly be little to no backlash felt if a young person was to suddenly declare that they were going to spend a year or two travelling around the country. In fact, it is probably more common now for a person to say that they're going to be travelling around the world rather than their own nation. Travelling and delaying or even being out of employment have all become a common standard. People are now accustomed to the concept and most recognise it simply as part of growing up or living. This certainly wasn't the case in the 1950s. There would have been general disdain, widespread suspicion, and even the real risk of being arrested for delinquency or vagrancy in some locations. Life and society has shifted considerably in the 60 years since On the Road was written. I see the novel today primarily as a window that permits the reader to see into a now vanished world. By this novel we get to feel and know the world and the people of this time, and we get a sense of what the Beat generation was and what it was trying to overcome. By seeing this novel through this lens, we are then able to translate its spirit to a relevance in our lives today. If Sal and Dean were here now, what would they be rebelling against? And what would they be doing as a means of escape and exploration? Would it be something physical, or would it be digital in nature? The novel can still speak to that restless part of us, the part that wants to break free, hit the physical or electronic highway and chase something unknown. Whether you see it as a masterpiece or a messy, self-indulgent ride, one thing's for sure: On the Road changed literature forever. So, what are your thoughts on this road trip classic? Which character spoke to you the most? And which bit of dialogue did you find the most profound? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading and remember, stay cool and I'll dig you later, man.